Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show.
And welcome back, everybody, today to my last day this week guest hosting the Shannon Joy Show. My name is Tiffany Cianci. I am your guest host this week. And first, I want to thank everybody for rolling with my 1 p.m. start times because I do have filming obligations in the morning. And I've been so happy to be here all week long. If you are not familiar with me, my name is Tiffany Cianci. I am an independent journalist, a small business advocate, and I especially focus on doing all things related to saving small businesses and the working class from private equity and monopolization. Today, we have some very important stories to cover. We're going to do some recaps from the week. We do have some contributing creators that I'm going to feature as well. I hope you guys are excited because we have much to cover. There's some heavy stuff, some light stuff, and a little bit of fun along the way. So thank you guys for hanging in. The live chat's already doing really well, which I adore. Yesterday, we had James Lee on, who came on to talk about Section 219 and 224, which are currently being forced through the NDAA in the House and in the Senate. Right now, this is a must-pass military spending bill that right now is being attached to a Section 219, formerly 224 amendment that is designed to consolidate our military apparatus with the military apparatus of Israel. If you haven't gotten to watch yesterday's episode, I recommend going back to watch it because it will lay a lot of foundation for some of what we're going to talk about today. But we continue today what I've been talking about all week long, which is that throughout the entire week, I've been talking about the importance of codifying states' rights and protecting Americans through the use of the state and local apparatus where the federal government is failing us. And unfortunately, I have run to no shortage of stories to cover because every single day there's another example of a story out there where our federal government is failing the American people because it's been captured by billionaires and special interests, and the states are instead rising up to do that work, which is a good thing, except corporate interests are now moving to consolidate power, taking it away from the states and moving it in the executive where they've already secured control. Today, we're going to start with a story about, well, it's fresh out of Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, over the last year and a half, has had 3 different jurisdictions, starting in Allentown, then Philadelphia, and most recently Pittsburgh, that are filing monopoly antitrust lawsuits against REV Group and its subsidiaries. What is REV Group? Well, you're not supposed to know what it is. What it is a company that has bought up every single manufacturer of any size or value in the United States that produces the equipment necessary to fight fires at the state, local, federal, and even the forest fire level. And what they've done as they've acquired every single company is they've shut down most of the factories, consolidated it into a few, and hiked prices as much as 700% for equipment essential to keep Americans alive and protect cities that are paid for by local tax dollars. Their revenue model is foolproof because we have to have fire departments and you can't buy equipment anywhere else. I want to start today with a video from Anna R. Matson. That's her Substack article. So this is Anna Matson's Substack article, Fire and EMS Truck Prices Spike, Leaving Communities Without Essential Equipment. She's in Michigan, and Michigan did an investigation, and she did several FOIA requests to see how much equipment had gone up just in the previous year, and how much they'd started delaying equipment to force people to pay rush fees if they wanted to get equipment in time to, save a community. And so what she found is that the fire department chief came on her show. It's called the If People Only Knew podcast. And they had the following to say. Can you clip of Anna Matson's show for me? I think it's video 1B.
People don't realize your property taxes, I'm pretty sure in every state, but maybe some states are a little bit different, but at least here in Michigan, your property taxes pay for your local services, your police, your fire, your parks, your roads, your water, sewer. And there's kind of like this big push to get rid of property taxes. And trust me, I'm for less taxes, but I don't think people realize that that is the most important tax because it pays for our most essential services. So maybe we can reorganize it in the future. That's a whole nother conversation. But a lot of people are seeing an increase in property taxes because of you. It's your fault, the fire department. But it's not really your fault. It's corporations that are skyrocketing the price of fire trucks and ambulances. Yeah. So go ahead and talk about that.
It's called private equity roll-up. Everybody knows private equity is buying any business they can. I mean, if you go to your dentist now, they're in storefronts instead of being their mom and pops because they bought out dentists, they bought out plumbers, electricians, and the private equity goes out and they buy companies and then they source them together. And how that works for the fire truck industry is the private equity roll up, and I will name the names, Pierce and KME, which turned into the Rev Group. KME is one of the fire trucks, but they own multiple ones. But it's really the Rev Group and the Pierce. They are these huge conglomerates that control the fire truck industry. So if you go back to 2000, one of the things that the fire chiefs and the union agree on, which is not very many sometimes, but we agree on, we are absolutely being taken advantage of. And when I say we, I mean the taxpayers. The taxpayers are paying. In 10 years ago, a fire engine, which is the one, not a ladder truck on top, not a ladder on top, a fire engine was about $500,000. Today, that same engine, no different, just the upgraded model, is about $1.1 million. A ladder truck, and I know this because it happened in my department in 2019 when they put in for a ladder truck, it was about $1.1 million. That same ladder truck today is $2.3 million.
How long does it take? You put the order in.
Yep. You need
a fire truck. Your fire truck breaks today.
You put
the order in. How long until you?
36 to 42 months is right now for a ladder truck, and about 36 months for an engine. And that's because they can do that. Also the industry did is they bought out
people. Can we pause
right
there, LJ? So I actually contributed to Anna Matson's reporting on this. She and I talked a lot because she was doing a really serious investigation about why taxes were going up in her small community in Holly, Michigan, someplace where she's very, very active in the local community. She's a huge advocate online for taking part in local elections, for doing FOIA requests, and for holding accountability to your public officials that have been elected to office. She's sued her government multiple times over a failure to comply with FOIA requests. She's quite active online. If you don't follow her, you should. But when we were researching this, what we figured out was that several companies were being rolled up by a group of private equity firms. And those roll-ups were intentionally shutting down plants across America. And then they were consolidating to force longer and longer wait times, lag times, right? I would like to pull up tweet 1C, please, from Anna Matson. And we figured out that prices in some of these pieces of equipment have gone up 600%. 100%. And we're not talking about over the course of like decades. We're talking about over the course of a year. If you look at her tweet right here, which I'm going to try to make bigger so that I can see it. Let's see if I can pin it here. For me, I cannot. That's okay. What you'll see is massive increases in the cost from like $186,000 for a piece of equipment to $300,000 to $600,000. Then you get to the ladder trucks, you're at $1 million, then you're at $2.3 million. Wait times go from 12 months to 48 months. But don't worry, you can pay to rush it. You can pay a fee to rush it, right? Well, right now, and I want to pull up Article 1D, what we're seeing is that all across Pennsylvania, they are leading the charge to sue to break up REV Group. This is the group that now is being traded publicly that bought up all of the consolidated roll-ups that private equity created. And people tell me all the time, we can't hold private equity accountable when they do a roll-up because they're only getting a regional monopoly. And our antitrust laws were written for national monopolies. Well, what happened here is they got like 3 private equity firms to roll up every single region and quietly consolidated all of them under this group with 0 SEC scrutiny because there is no regulation of private equity. They can do whatever they want. And they ended up consolidating the entire industry into one company that is now publicly traded that has a short-proof model because you cannot buy a fire truck literally anywhere else. That's it. And if your community needs something, your taxpayers will pay whatever they charge. So we want to say thank you to the people of Allentown. We want to say thank you to Philadelphia. Today, I'm saying thank you to Pittsburgh, who they filed their new lawsuit yesterday, and California is now joining the mix. But why isn't every state in America joining this? Why isn't every state in America suing to break up this monopoly? What we really need to be asking is why isn't the FTC and the DOJ suing to break up this monopoly? That is what our antitrust laws were built for. And they wouldn't have needed to break it up if they'd gotten involved just a little bit sooner. This reporting has been happening for 1.5 years before the IPO, before REV Group got all of them. Okay, this reporting has been going on and it sat and nobody did anything because Trump came into the FTC and fired everybody, came into the DOJ and fired all of the Democrats. And now there are simply no attorneys to prosecute these cases. Once again, our agencies have been captured. The new DOJ antitrust chief just came out earlier this week, and I showed you guys that article on Monday, and said, I don't want to prosecute monopolies anymore. I just want to settle with them. He told that to all of the antitrust attorneys in his division. I just want to settle them. Well, the problem with settling antitrust cases is that it gives money to the federal government that they get to then say is a surplus, gives nothing to the American people that are still suffering under the monopoly, and they never break anything up. Nothing gets better. Nothing gets better. The point of antitrust cases is to break up monopolies. It's to stop monopoly creation. It's to create and foster competition in the American economic marketplace. And without economic competition, we end up living under monopoly rule everywhere, which is where we're at right now. We're seeing it in veterinary care. We're seeing it in nursing homes. We're seeing it in hospital care. We're seeing it in fire trucks. We're seeing it in grocery stores. We're seeing it in the media. We're seeing it in the press. Everywhere is a monopoly, and we're certainly seeing it in the tech sector, where we have 4 trust me bros that control everything in a full surveillance apparatus at this point. It's a huge problem. And so I encourage every single one of you to start contacting your local government and saying, what are we paying for a fire truck? What's it doing to my taxes, and why aren't you suing to make it better? Make it better. Everybody to recognize that as your property taxes on your houses come in this year, which usually happens about this time of year, they're reassessed over the summer. As your property taxes come in and your houses go up if you're a homeowner, which many people cannot be in this economy, and that is a direct result of these monopolistic practices and their ability to acquire single-family homes, something that the new Road to Homeownership Act is a farce at trying to prevent, because it allows any company to own 350 homes. And if they own 350, they don't have to sell them. They could own 100,000. They don't have to sell them. They can just spin off another shell corporation and buy another 350. It will actually do nothing to stop what's happening with private equity's acquisition of single family homes. That was supposed to do it. It didn't, because Josh Hawley wanted to write a good bill and he didn't get to write it. And Trump approved this one, but then didn't sign it because he wanted to hold the Save America Act hostage. We're going to get to that at the end of the show. Right now, we're going to pivot to something overseas. One of the things we've been talking about all week is the war in Iran and how it has rejuvenated. Yesterday, we watched a video where Trump said 4 weeks ago today that in 4 weeks we would run out of oil reserves. Yesterday, I looked at a gas station where I have to go today, and it's $5 a gallon. It was $3.30 2 weeks ago when people thought the war was winding down. It's back to $5 a gallon. And what we're seeing is a country where we've depleted our military reserves on very critical weapon systems. And one of the things that I've been saying on pretty much every podcast I visited is that in moving almost all of our naval resources, most carriers that are slow moving and take weeks to move around the globe, by the way, in doing this and in depleting our critical weapons as much as 65 and 70% in some of our most critical weapons, what we've done is left our other allies susceptible to huge risk, specifically Taiwan. Now, I want to talk about Taiwan for just a second, because most people don't recognize that 93% of all of the chips that we need for every data center, for every piece of rocketry, for every computer system that comes into this company or country, for every single thing that we build, for Nintendo, for a PlayStation, for a cloud server, for everything we have, for your cell phone batteries, the chips that go in your cell phone motherboards, 93% of our motherboards come and our chips come through Taiwan. It's why it's such an important strategic naval ally. It's why we have to be so careful with it, and it's why we're supposed to be their greatest supporter. But we've moved all of our naval resources around the planet and depleted our resources. And I want to show you what's happening in China right now. If you can roll the video for me at 2A, please, LJ.
Building exact replicas of American and Taiwanese fighter jets and warships in the middle of the desert, and then bombing them. The Chinese military even created a model of Taiwan's presidential office and other key government buildings to practice storming the capital. This is one of the clearest indications that Xi Jinping is readying his military for an invasion of Taiwan and is priming for a scenario in which the US become involved. This is the Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan, America's largest base in the Indo-Pacific. It would be key to the defense of Taiwan should the US become involved. What you can see now is that very same base, but replicated in the Chinese desert, accompanied by 3 model American Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a major US warship. And here is an impact crater likely caused from the test launch of a ballistic missile. China has also built a replica of Taiwan's Suao Naval Base. While it's not Taiwan's largest Navy base, it's one of only a few located along the eastern coast, meaning it's farther from China and protected by a large mountain range, which would make it harder to hit in the event of an invasion. But China isn't only preparing for an assault on naval forces, it's also looking to the air. Satellite images show runways riddled with craters in the Taklamakan Desert. Next to one of them are 2 rows of F-22 model aircraft, 4 of which have been visibly destroyed. A line of replica F-16s and F-35s can also be seen. But staving off American and Taiwanese defenses is only phase 1. If the PLA made it to land, taking control of Taiwan's government would be a whole other story. Satellite images show 2 mock-ups of part of the Boai Special Zone in Taipei where its government is located. The second of the 2 models even includes the streets connecting the government buildings, which experts say were likely built for soldiers to rehearse storming the capital. And in 2015, China released a training video showing its soldiers doing exactly that. While intelligence suggests that China isn't planning on attacking Taiwan imminently, the range and sophistication of these military models would suggest that if and when Beijing decides to launch its attack, it would be prepared.
I need everybody to understand how important Taiwan is. It is not just an ally. It is the bottleneck to every single technological and industrial thing that we do as a nation. And almost all of our naval reserves right now are in the Middle East, achieving nothing. Right now in Iran, we just had a 14-point ceasefire deal that was created that was far, far worse than the one that Obama had originally secured, right? In it, it gave control of the Strait of Hormuz to Iran. It did not eliminate proliferation of all of the material they were doing. It did not allow for inspections. We had those before, right? It required us to pay $300 billion to rebuild everything we destroyed. Now we're working on another deal. And don't worry, JD Vance is on a book tour, right? He's the negotiator that's handling this. He's on a book tour right now and doing Rogan, where he's saying that, and JD Vance said this, Israel is sabotaging his work trying to get the ceasefire reinstated by using disinformation campaigns through Brad Pascale, which is a story we covered Monday. Trump's former campaign manager, who's getting $1.5 million a month to flood the internet with pro-Israel pieces and anti-Iran propaganda to try and retrain AI models to say only good things about them through Reddit and through regular blogging. And meanwhile, the ally that actually supports all of what we need technologically. I mean, we make oil here in America. We do that. We actually make quite a lot. We do make oil and we refine oil here. That's what we get from Iran. We also get fertilizer and helium. We get nitrogen and helium, very important. We get those through the Strait of Hormuz. They're important. But heck, Trump, he used an executive order in the Defense Production Act to shore up nitrogen creation here through glyphosate, right? He did that. He can do that again. We have factories here that could make that. Helium is harder. But we cannot get chips. We cannot get chips. There is only one company in the world that can make the machine that makes chips. It is based in Holland. And they can only produce like one every like 8 months. And right now they're all in Taiwan. And so people really need to recognize that the more that this war drags on, it has implications for inflation. It has implications for helium, for MRI machines. Most people don't know that helium shortages are real because you can't run an MRI machine without it. They're very essential to modern medicine, right? There's a reason that even Disney is taking a hit on their helium acquisition right now. But also, we have nitrogen coming through the Strait of Hormuz that goes into fertilizer that is stopping our farmers from planting. In some regions of the country, as many as 60% of farmers and 80% of small farms have chosen not to plant crops essential to feeding this nation because they can't afford fertilizer because prices right now, they say are up 52%. That is not correct. If you go back a year and 2 months, they're up 72%. 72% our farmers cannot afford to fertilize their crops. And nobody, literally there's only 20% of farmers that have pre-ordered fertilizer for next year. You add to that the fact that diesel fuel is up to $6 a gallon in most of farmland right now, and that's how they run their tractors, and farmers can't afford, so they're just taking a loss this year and not planting anything. I live in agricultural preservation land, And all around my house, as far as the eye can see, fields that are normally filled with corn are laying barren with a few sprigs that have popped up from old seeds that were still in the ground last year. There's nothing growing. And we're about to see a very real spike in prices because the stuff that we grow here in America primarily feeds livestock. It feeds our poultry, our pigs, our cows. And what we're going to see is a massive land grab and a massive industry grab because these farmers are going to lose too much money. They're going to be forced to sell to industrial farmers, and the monopolies will strengthen and our communities will weaken. And so will our food sovereignty, because all of the agriculture in America is governed by 8 monopolies, and all of them are internationally owned, save one. They're owned in China, and they're owned in Argentina and Brazil, and they're owned in Germany. When we turn over the sovereignty of this nation and we deplete the resources and stop the resources needed to maintain whatever sovereignty we have left, we're left in a situation where there's kind of a checkmate for the farmers of this country. Everybody feel great? Like, do we feel great again? Do we feel like we're winning? Because I think most people feel duped. I think they feel very, very duped. And we've talked about that a lot, and so a lot of people online. Yesterday, we saw a clip where CNN, recently acquired by Larry Ellison, one of Trump's closest allies and one of the largest donors to the IDF, CNN recently posted a poll that said every MAGA voter they polled, thousands, 100% approved of the job he's doing as commander-in-chief. I'd like to poll the audience. Do 100% of Trump voters approve of the job he's doing? For the record, I was not a Trump voter. I was also not a Kamala voter. I live streamed my vote, and I was not shy about it. And I'm always open about that because I don't begrudge anyone their vote. Nobody had a good choice in this last election. There have been no good choices really in quite a while because these elections have been manipulated by the GOP and the DNC to make sure we get whoever will toe the line to continue the same foreign and fiscal policy we've always had. Now, I'm going to take us to story number 3, and we're going to actually look at some videos of me, which I never do when I'm hosting a podcast. However, one of the things I did when I guest hosted this show a couple weeks ago, I think it's like 19 days ago now, I guest hosted this show live from VidCon in Anaheim, California. And while I was there, what I talked about was the fact that SpaceX and Anthropic and OpenAI were going to IPO. And I explained to everybody that a bunch of pieces had been put on a chessboard to ensure that they got overvalued so that they would get immediate access to the index funds so that you would bail them out because they're all losing too much money and investors won't give them anymore. We talked about private equity and private credit's role in that. What I want to do is I think I want to start with video number 1, and then we'll go from there.
Not using their own money, they're using printed money from a bank.
Yeah.
All the money that they put in is made whole literally within 30 days, and they dividend it all out to themselves, and they're made whole before the deal ever is dry.
What is SpaceX?
SpaceX brought in $18 billion last year, and they spent $23.9 billion last year. They lost $4.8 billion. Okay, so they brought in $18 billion in revenue. They lost $4.8 billion. They overspent by $4.8 billion.
And that's just SpaceX.
Just SpaceX.
So that's
That
not
was before
X. That's
Grok
not
was
Grok.
rolled in.
Okay. All right.
It was before all of that. That's what SpaceX did. SpaceX, of all of the 3 IPOs we're going to be looking at today, which is Anthropic, OpenAI, and SpaceX has the most viability because we're busy, doing a lot of government contracting for the space program to them. So they will have revenue. Will they have $2 trillion in revenue? Absolutely not. Okay. They have zero profit model right now that could in any way justify a $2 trillion valuation. And that showed, right? Like, we know that all their friends and family bought in low, which is the model. We know that when you offer it at IPO, those same friends and family sell a bunch of their shares at the top, and they make a killing in one day for their early
That's why
investment.
you have all of these people in Los Angeles now that are going out and buying, $5 million homes. There's a resurgence in that market.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I want people to understand about what we started with there is that a month before the SpaceX IPO was being announced, they rolled Grok into SpaceX. Why would you roll Grok, which is an X platform, into SpaceX? There's a very good reason. Grok needs data centers, and they couldn't fund them. They couldn't get the money because all of the data centers are tumbling right now, and the private credit firms that have been engaging in shadow banking to fund that what they've been doing is they've cut it off because they've had a run on the banks, and all of the investors are trying to get their money out because there is no model that is profitable for any of these data centers to ever make money. There is no model that is profitable that would allow them to replace all the chips in these data centers every 2 to 3 years, especially when those chips are, again, at the behest of a single bottleneck in a handful of small companies. And so Grok couldn't get their data centers built. What they had were several investors in the private credit markets that lost investment, and they needed money fast. So they rolled it into SpaceX before the IPO because we would be forced to buy because, and I want to show, I think video 3, maybe next, please.
Thing to you, and you tell me if this sounds logical and reasonable.
Sure.
An SEC rule change ordered under the Trump administration has fundamentally altered index eligibility. It canceled traditional public float thresholds and the 12-month positive return requirements. This opens a direct channel for massive loss-making companies to secure immediate inclusion into public index fund pools. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, it sounds reasonable if you're trying to bail out companies and not have it be labeled as bailout.
That's right.
Right? This is socializing the downs. That same executive order we were just talking about ordered the SEC and the Department of Labor to make this possible. The Department of Labor is in their rulemaking process right now, where they're trying to grant immunity to the fund managers. My followers have sent 40,000 letters opposing that. Of the 44,000 they got, 40,000 were from my followers. Very, very proud of all of the podcasts. I went on your podcast, all of them, to get people to speak out. We're hoping we're going to stop that rule.
I'm going to
So what I need you to understand is that prior to May 26th, starting in 2001, let's back up. In 1999, the dot-com bubble began to pop. And what happened was prior to that, companies could go to IPO and immediately get access to the index funds. And so during the dot-com boom, all of these companies that were like pets.com, cat.com, got their IPOs, got a bunch of money with no profit models, and they got forced into the index funds where 401ks all across America were forced to buy non-profitable company investment. And it didn't diversify the risk. It exacerbated the risks that 401ks were enduring. And in 1999 to 2001, hundreds of thousands of Americans lost their 401ks. Millions of people lost massive value. Their retirements were delayed by 7, 10, 15 years. And in 2001, a new rule was put in place that for a company to gain access to the index funds, they had to prove for 12 to 18 months that they were not only profitable, but could generate returns for their investors consistently. So you would go to IPO, and then you would start getting returns 4 or 6 quarters in a row. Your investors would be making money, okay? And you were a profitable company. And then and only then could you apply to the index funds. This was direct reaction to the loss of nearly 1 million Americans' retirements and millions of Americans' retirements being delayed by up to a decade or more, okay? And that rule has been in effect ever since for 25 years until May 26th. In response to an executive order that was written by Donald Trump in October that I came on this show to talk about, where he wrote an executive order saying he was creating a democratization of access to alternative investment strategies. Don't worry, kids, you're going to get into the billionaires club now. You can invest like the big boys. Now you can invest your 401k in private equity, private credit, and crypto. This was lobbied for more than a decade by this lobby because they knew that they were stacking too much debt on all their investments and they were going to go bust and they would need a bailout. And no president, including Trump in his first term, was stupid enough to do it. He called it lunacy in his first term. He said it was irrational in his first term. But they came back this year with the crypto lobby. They joined forces, and suddenly this was a win-win. Well, people think that that executive order was to give you access to invest the way you want. It was not. You could always invest your 401k in private equity, private credit, and crypto. You could self-manage your funds any way you wanted to. What that executive order actually was aimed at doing was hidden in the last couple paragraphs, where Trump said, and I'm calling on the SEC and the Department of Labor to make it possible. Now, nobody was paying attention to the fact that private credit was the only funder of these data centers and that they were over-leveraged into them. But the private equity and the private credit issuers did know that, and they knew they were about to be in real trouble. They were seeing warning bells that investors were recognizing their money was not safe, and they were trying to draw it down. So they leaned hard. Now, why would he need the Department of Labor and the SEC? Well, that video just alluded to it. the SEC would have to change the index fund access port so that these IPOs could find another way to get money from 401ks because the investors were stopping. They weren't giving their money anymore. Harvard pulled out, Yale pulled out, Cornell pulled out, all of the endowments and hedge funds pulled out, the billionaires pulled out, the pensions pulled out. And the only place left to get money to keep funding these speculative data centers was you. The American people don't have any money except in their 401ks, where there is $14.8 trillion currently sitting in American savings. Now, how much money do they need? Well, if you look right now, private equity is $11 trillion short. They can't move $4 trillion right now in companies that are stuck on their books, but they need $11 trillion. How much does the private credit market need? It's funny you should ask. Just between 2.8 and 3.8 trillion. You add those two numbers together, what do you get? $14.8 trillion. The exact amount of money sitting in American 401ks right now. Coincidentally, they started also a rulemaking process at the Department of Labor that many of you are helping me to try to stop, where they're giving immunity to fund managers. Why would fund managers in your 401ks need immunity from you? Well, it's because I said 401ks could always be invested in private equity, and they have. And every single time that a fund has invested in private equity, they've lost all of their investors' money. And then they've been sued, and they've lost. And the investors have sued for recklessly investing their money in high risk, high fee structure investments that don't have the same rate of return as general investment strategies like index funds. And those funds were shut down. The fund investors lost their lawsuits, and they had to give all their money back to investors who were never made all the way whole. And so Trump, in that executive order, actually called on the Department of Labor and the SEC to force them to make it so, one, your index fund investments will automatically give money to these companies to bail them out. And two, if your 401k manager is approached by one of these private equity or private credit funds with a sweetheart deal, hey, we'll give you a 20% commission if you invest your money with us. Here, take a look at this prospectus. Oh, let's do it on my yacht. Let's go to the Mediterranean and talk about it. Or maybe one of their $1 billion investors is really in trouble in one of his private equity funds, and he needs a bailout, and he gets them to come in and fix it because he gets higher structure fees from them, and he loses all your money. He gets immunity, and you can't sue him for it. And there's no way to stop it, despite these rules having been in effect for 25 years, because we've already seen this. It's already happened. We have the proof of concept, and we know it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. Can you put video number 2 for me, LJ?
People don't even realize what companies are inside of SpaceX. For example, Grok's in SpaceX.
I mean, it was only put there a month ago, and they did that for very good reason.
And could Tesla be sort of folded in?
I mean, that would be hard because Tesla's its own stock. So they would have to, one would have to acquire the other, but he has enough of
He's the man for the job.
He could do it, right?
Yeah.
But if he wanted to. You know, Grok was only put into SpaceX because it was going to IPO. And Grok can't afford to build its data centers. And they needed money, and they couldn't get any more investor money for Grok and its data centers. But if they forced it into this IPO and got a high valuation, it would automatically be added to the index funds, which gives them our money to build their data centers.
What?
So let's talk about what's happened since SpaceX's IPO, where they got a $2 trillion valuation and were immediately given access to the NASDAQ 100 index funds and the Vanguard flagship index fund, which if you have a 401k, I can almost guarantee you are invested in. They only had a 5-day waiting period, and coincidentally, the SEC also changed a rule eliminating what's called the public float. Now, one of the things that was put into effect in 2001 is that a public float was required for access to the index funds of a minimum of 12 to 16%. What that means is that when a stock is offered at the IPO, at least 12 to 16% of all stock options must be available for the public to buy, because that gives the public the ability to come in and have shareholder input. It allows them to come in, and some large investors could even come in and get forced onto the board. But it shows and it diversifies the risk across a greater number of people. Well, they eliminated that. They eliminated that because these IPOs, Anthropic, OpenAI, and SpaceX, they've been making sweetheart deals to keep money flowing because the money's been drying up. So they've been selling these shares in advance to private inside investors over the last year and a half at disgustingly low prices. We're talking 70, 80% lower than what it was going to be offered at the IPO that you're going to pay. And all of those investors have been sitting here waiting for the IPO to come, and they're holding large numbers of shares. And what are they going to do as soon as it gets to IPO? When you're buying at the top through the index funds, they're going to sell. And they've started to. And now we've seen that SpaceX has not just tumbled. 2 days ago, it fell below its initial offering price all the way out. And now we're down another 17 to 21% on the day. What we've seen is that they were hoping when they announced it would get into the index funds, you would see this big boon. It did not, because it was already priced in because of the SEC rule change. But also, all of the investors looked at how much money SpaceX was losing that I've been screaming about for months. And they said, whoa, 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 do you have any plan? And they don't have any plan. And so right now, all of those investors they got out and they flooded the market with their shares. You guys bought at the top, and you will keep buying at the top. You will keep being forced to through the index funds, and they'll all be made whole, and you will be the diversification of the risk. Next up, Anthropic. And Anthropic is in worse condition. They're losing money. They have zero future profit model. They have small government contracts. And right now, for every $100 you're spending in an Anthropic membership, you're getting $16,000 in subsidized compute. They can't afford to keep losing $15,000 a customer per month forever. Eventually, they have to turn that into profitability, and they don't have a path to do that. Right now, the only thing going for any of these companies is war, because they're hoping government contracts will make them profitable. Well, they owe trillions of dollars. Trillions. They owe more than we're spending on our national deficit each year. Each of them, right? We're going 3 trillion right now. SpaceX is not quite $1 trillion. OpenAI is well over $1 trillion committed right now. Anthropic over $1 trillion committed. And they have no profit model. And you're going to be the one that's forced to bail them out. For those of you that are wondering what to do, I encourage you guys to contact your fund managers and demand that they stop investment in any index fund that is buying any of these 3 stocks. Now, I believe OpenAI is going to be delayed because SpaceX has been a catastrophic IPO. Statistically, at an IPO, when people are forced to buy at the top, it tumbles about 17% over the next year from the top. Right now, we're seeing a halving and then another 17%. And so as a result, OpenAI realizes that they didn't get there fast enough. They were not able to get their IPO in time to get the money first. And now they're saying they're going to delay it for a year and choose another profit strategy. But they don't have any money. They need it badly. And so they're offering discounted notes to anyone that will give them any cash. Anthropic, I think they're going to announce that they're delaying their IPO next. They are doing okay in enterprise, but again, not nearly well enough to create $16,000 a month in sales to a company per employee. I just need you guys to understand that if you believe the government wouldn't do this, oh yes, they would. And that's where we're at. LJ, do we have a commercial break I'm supposed to kick to? All right, everybody. Right now, I'm going to take you to a commercial break. I'll be back in just a few minutes.
I never planned to start a skincare company. I was just trying to help my family. We were dealing with skin issues that conventional products simply were not fixing. And the more I researched, the more I questioned what was actually in the products we were using every single day. As a mom, I couldn't ignore it, and I became deeply concerned about our constant exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, especially in products we were putting on our skin and on our children. So I started making my own. That's how North Idaho Tallow began. Today, I handcraft every product myself in North Idaho using thoughtfully chosen ingredients like grass-fed tallow, jojoba oil, and pure essential oils. You will never find synthetic fragrance oils in any of my products. Everything is made in small batches, filled by hand, carefully weighed, because my standard is simple. If I wouldn't use it on my own family, I will not sell it to yours. What started as a way to care for my family has grown into something I'm incredibly proud to share with yours. This is North Idaho Tallow. Traditional ingredients, thoughtfully made, no compromises.
We haven't seen huge gains in gold and silver because the dominance of the PSYOP, the marketing campaign, the propaganda campaign that has been waged against the American people and against the markets over the past 3 years, hyping up the AI bubble relentlessly. I've never seen anything like it. At some point, people are going to realize, and investors are going to realize, retail investors and institutional investors are going to realize that there's no there there. And everybody is realizing it now. I'm seeing it all over my social media. Everything that we told you here on the Shannon Joy Show is coming true. And this is when people move into safe haven assets safe haven assets for, the entirety of human history have been gold and silver, predominantly gold. If you do not have a gold strategy, I want to highly encourage you to go to shiftgold.com/joy. That is shiftgold.com/joy ASAP, like today, to get your metal strategy in place. At Shift Gold, you can buy and sell physical gold and silver. You can explore hedging against the chaos with a gold or silver-backed IRA, and he even has an option for tokenized gold, which gives you the ability to buy physical gold and silver. You don't take custody of it, but you can buy it in smaller chunks. So you can allocate $50, $100, $200 a month to that tokenized gold. And as soon as you hit a certain threshold, you can trade it in and you can actually take custody of your physical gold and silver. It's a great option for people who don't have enough money to meet those reserves if you're buying physical gold and silver, and for younger investors, people who want to begin to hedge. So that's shiftgold.com/joy. I cannot tell you how much I love the ivermectin cream from the Wellness Company. twc.health/joy, twc.health/joy. My son has just started using the ivermectin cream and he loves it. Not only is it controlling his acne, he had adolescent onset acne, really struggled with it in his sophomore, junior year. We battled it. We've gotten it under control, but he still has occasional outbreaks and he still has the residual redness and scarring from those really difficult years, which has been frustrating for him. Recently put him on the ivermectin, and not only is it keeping his skin perfectly clear, he came to me this morning and he said, "Mom, in just a couple days, I've already noticed that the redness and the scarring that I deal with every day is going away. It's actually reducing that redness from the scarring, which is unbelievable." That's something that I had to do. I had adult onset acne in my mid to late 20s, and the scarring was really bad. And it took me years of microneedling with PRP to reduce all of the bumps and all of the redness at the bottom half of my face. This is being cured by ivermectin. The ivermectin cream, my son is using it. I use it as well for rosacea. If you're older and you're beginning to get that redness throughout your cheeks and on your nose and around your mouth, and it's really bothering you, the ivermectin cream knocks it out in as little as the first use. I noticed a huge difference within a day or two. So you can get that on discount from the Wellness Company. It's one of their best products. twc.health/joy.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Shannon Joy Show. My name is Tiffany Cianci, guest hosting from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I want to start the second half of the show with a little lightheartedness, again, from the World Cup, which, if you're not a World Cup fan, I'm sorry, because I am. I love the community it's creating. I love the international community it's fostering. I've absolutely loved watching the Scots in Boston. I've loved watching the South Korea and Mexico bromance down south of the border. And one of the things I've really loved is actually watching Spain take over Chattanooga, Tennessee, which has been growing a soccer community there for years. And what they did was they came in to this tiny little town in Chattanooga, and they've gotten the keys to the city. The most famous players in the world have been out shopping at Walmart with nobody bothering them. They've had parades for them there, and they've had a quiet place to practice, which their coaches said is what's propelled them. Now, yesterday I started with a really light video, yesterday's episode, that showed the most impossible of photographs from 25 years ago, when Messi was just beginning to play for Argentina, and they had a contest for UNICEF where he was going to do a photo shoot with a baby. And any baby could apply. Hundreds of thousands of babies applied, and one person was chosen for their baby to come in and do a photo shoot with the then very unfamous Messi. And it was Yamal. And Yamal is the most famous player and the most expensive player in the world right now, playing for Spain. And baby Yamal and Messi were in this photo shoot together, and now they're playing each other in the World Cup final. Well, today I want to show you a little bit about Yamal, who's apparently an amazing kid who's been shopping his way around Chattanooga, Tennessee, but he also lives very humbly, staying with his family because he has a young brother he wants to stay connected to. I want to play that video for you right now because he's his biggest fan. That's a big.
Mambo. Chopper. Doggy style. No te canses.
¿Y qué fue? No hiciste nada. Con tanta chapa, va a hacerle ranking, canking, can. ¿Y qué fue? No hiciste nada. Con tanta chapa, va a hacerle ranking, canking, can.
Mambo. Chopper. Doggy style.
Canking, canking, can, can, canking, canking, can.
No te canses.
Canking, canking, can, can, canking, 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 can. Tú di que la liga la mata. Muñeca metiste la pata. Deja ese paquete, paquete, paquete. Si a ti te ganaste la ñata, busque alcohol. La pipa se tranca.
And LJ, they're telling me I'm getting a lot of feedback from my computer speaker. I don't know if there's anything you can do to help me with that. Oh, they're saying it's a little better now. All right, good, 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 good. All right, everybody, thank you for that feedback. I hope you guys are enjoying the World Cup. I think it's great. I think it's been great to watch people come from all over the world and see what's amazing about America, which is not our politics. That's horrible. What is amazing about America are the people, the communities, and it's really showing, and we're fostering all these amazing community like bridges between us and all over the world. And so I highly encourage you guys to go out and find a party this Sunday at a local bar where you can support your local economy and absolutely watch and join a World Cup party. It's going to be awesome. I think everyone should do it. For those of you, we're gonna be a little rocky for the next little bit. One of our clips did not transfer right, so we're gonna see if we can get there. LJ and I have been problem solving through it here for the last few minutes. And we're gonna see, but we're gonna go to our next story where, hold on one second, we're almost there. I'm gonna start off talking about something that's very, very important because we all thought we were gonna get a little relief in our pricing because the Supreme Court overturned tariffs, which had driven up pricing in America for the last year and a half. And it was announced that $166 billion in tariffs that had been charged the American people were going to be refunded. And obviously, we were all pretty excited about that. We'd been paying higher grocery prices, higher car parts prices, higher gas prices, higher small business prices. Small businesses had been paying more for all of their supplies, right? Everything in America that was tariffed, we were paying more for. And every company in America was passing along the increases they were paying for tariff revenue to the consumer, increasing prices that we know will never come down. The Supreme Court ruled that those tariffs were illegal and that $166 billion needed to be returned, not to the American consumer, to the companies, who, of course, many announced we're going to try to pass along those savings back to the consumers because they had borne the weight of it. Of course. Is that what happened? Of course, that's not what happened. Can we start with a video from Aaron Parnas? He is a reporter here out of DC, somebody I'm friends with, and I just wanted to share his clip from April when this announcement was made. If we have it. We might not. We don't have it. That's okay. We're going to have it in a minute. What was announced in April when this came out was that money was going to start flowing pretty quickly, but that now in July, most of the remainder of the money would be returned to corporations. A lot's changed since April. Because when all of these companies said, oh, we're definitely going to pass savings along to consumers, we know they actually paid for these tariffs, it's going to be great. As the tariff money started refunding, companies like McCormick were announcing that they had gotten record profits in their second quarter earnings, not because people had money to buy more of their products, like they sell hot sauce and they sell like every spice in America. And they're based in Maryland. They're a Hunt Valley company. They're one of the largest companies based in Maryland where I live. No, their second quarter earnings were record earnings because they got $31 billion returned to them in tariff refunds. And everybody asked, are you going to pass that along to consumers? No, they're not. Instead, they're using it, they say, to stave off the increased inflation from the war in Iran. And they're not the only company saying that. They've all decided to say it. Every publicly traded company is now releasing statements saying, unfortunately, it looks like we cannot offer any savings to consumers because we're trying to offset what would otherwise be out of control inflation from the war in Iran. And you have to ask yourself, because we all knew those prices were never coming back down. We all knew it. And your wages haven't gone up. And their employees' wages haven't gone up, but their profits have gone up. Literally every company, their profits have gone up. Their employee wages have gone down and layoffs keep happening. But what we do not have at all, is any relief for the American people. And today we find ourselves with a continuing war in Iran, once again a closed Strait of Hormuz, gas prices out of control. 4 weeks ago, Trump announced that all of our strategic reserves in America would be depleted in 4 weeks. That was 4 weeks ago. Today is 4 weeks. That is 4 weeks ago today. He said that publicly. And you have to ask yourself, why are we at war in the Middle East and nobody is focusing on affordability at home at all? There are 1,000 ways that this administration, who has control of the House, the Senate, the executive, and as Thomas Massie very famously said, to a lesser degree, the Supreme Court, he has control now, according to the Supreme Court's recent ruling, of every bipartisan agency in the country, where there is no longer bipartisanship and Trump can do whatever he wants. There are 1,000 ways he could be targeting affordability. He could be suing every monopoly in the United States to force down prices. Instead, his new antitrust chief at the DOJ says, we're not suing anyone anymore. Settlements only, no more court cases, which will not break up any monopolies. They could be doing that right now. They could restart the FTC's practice of going after people through the Robinson-Patman Act, which stops major corporations from pricing small businesses out of participating in the market. It stops people like PepsiCo, who have been targeted for this, specifically, that have been targeted for this, from offering Walmart a deal where Pepsi is so low that the price they can offer it at is lower than the price a small business has to pay at wholesale. So they get priced out of participating in the market. That's illegal. The Robinson-Patman Act makes that illegal. And the FTC was prosecuting Kroger, Pepsi, and a host of other egg companies that were pricing small grocers out of the market. And what happened? Trump fired them. And now those lawsuits have stopped, right? They could be doing those things, right? They could be lowering taxes. They could be doing tax holidays on things. There are 1,000 things. They could be passing bills right now to provide relief to Americans. And instead, we're fighting a war in Iran. We're not signing the Road to Homeownership Affordability Act into law. And we're holding the American people at the behest of our donors and our billionaire class that want these record profits to continue and needed an excuse to not actually pass along savings as they get back a $166 billion windfall in refunds of tariff money that Americans paid. That's where we're at. LJ, are we okay to move to story 5? All right, folks, I am going to turn to something that's a little bit solemn because I think we're all going to have some work to do on this. Last year, we saw the first 1,000-year flood to hit Texas Hill Country in generations. And unfortunately, 117 people died, most of them young girls at a summer camp in Texas Hill Country. It was the 4th of July fire. And 2 days ago, it started raining in Hill Country, Texas. And in the last 2 days, we have seen 24 inches of rain in an area that doesn't see 24 inches of rain in a year. It's horrifying. I want to start here with a year's worth of rain in 5 days. Here's the highest rainfall totals across the area. What I'd like to do is move to video 5A, please. This is from CNN, I believe.
Seen being rescued by Texas game wardens. Flooding has hit Texas hard, with roughly half a year's worth of rain already fallen in Uvalde County, one of the hardest hit areas. More than 75 people have been rescued from rising floodwaters across the state, according to Governor Greg Abbott. Multiple locations at rivers and creeks are in major flood stage, the highest possible level, with more predicted to join them when they crest over the next 24 hours. Wearing a
and if you can go to video 5B, because that was a day and a half ago when they were saying already half a year's rainfall has fallen. I want to take you to a video released just a few hours ago.
To rescue families trapped in another historic Hill Country flood. The Guadalupe River again pushing a deadly surge of water downstream.
When they talk about a wall of water, it is literally a wall of water.
First responders battling their way through black water to reach those trapped in the middle of the night. Rescuing Robert Shelton and his family from their flooded home in Kerrville.
Within a blink of an eye, it was already waist level, and then the door broke open and more water came rushing in.
He says they sheltered in the attic for more than 2 hours until rescuers could save them.
I was scared the house was going to break apart.
Daylight revealing the heart-sinking scope of yet another disaster here in Texas. 2 people are dead, more than 70 already rescued from the waters. It's the second 1,000-year flood in just over 1 year. The devastated community still reeling from the unprecedented 4th of July flood last year that killed 119 people in Kirk County alone.
It happened again. Unbelievable.
A memorial dedicated to the victims of last year's floods unveiled just 2 weeks ago, now underwater. The major highways left impassable in and out of the area. The water swelling into homes here, leaving some, like Carolyn Lampy, unsure whether they'll have a home left.
Well, my husband is fixing to be 90 years old, so this is really, really hard on him. He's having a really difficult time wrapping his head about maybe losing everything, you know, at age 90.
The
If you look at what happened to the girls at the camp last year, and you look at the fact that they still haven't instituted an early warning system for rising floodwaters, they're in bidding processes. Don't worry, we had a 1,000-year flood. It couldn't possibly happen again. And here we are. Now, I don't like to go super conspiratorial, but last year, like days after the flooding in Uvalde County last year, what we saw was a Sean Ryan episode, which I don't have a clip of. I did look for it today, where there was a cloud seeding company that said they had been cloud seeding in the area very openly. And he said, but don't worry, when we saw the storm coming, we stopped in time. I work in Austin, Texas, several weeks a month. And there are more lines across that sky than I can possibly articulate. It's really nice when I go to Utah instead, where there are no lines across the sky. I don't really understand why they're not cloud seeding in Utah, but I'm glad they're not. I never see it when I'm there. But you have to ask yourself how any community gets 2 1,000-year floods back to back, 1 year apart, almost to the week. And what that means, right? Coincidentally, just downstream from Texas Hill Country is the state in the United States that is first slated to run out of water for their data centers. Absolutely unrelated, I'm sure, but I figured I would mention that because there is a community just downstream from Hill Country whose reservoirs are almost all the way depleted. People are trucking in water, and there's a giant data center and a giant emergency power system there that needs water. And that's downstream from here. I'm going to finish this particular clip with a lighter note, because what I think all of us need to do is figure out how we can offer support to the people that have been displaced from their homes a second time, that I can guarantee you are not going to get bailed out from a company for a second round of flooding. The insurance companies will find a way to weasel out of it, and these people are going to need some help. So everybody should be checking resources, checking the Red Cross, seeing where you can make a difference. I'm a big fan of the Salvation Army. I say that because when I was 8 years old, my house burned down. And of all of the places we sought help, the Salvation Army actually put us up in hotels for 6 weeks. And they took me to their facilities, and me and all of the foster kids I was with got to shop for all the clothes we needed, the furniture we needed at Salvation Army stores, which were used, and it's fine. And we were able to refill the new house we lived in. And they brought us like kits of like all of the hair care products we needed, all of the toothbrushes, shampoo, everything. And they delivered it to the house. So my personal experience working with Salvation Army is very, very specific. I give all my money to them every Christmas in their little buckets. I think they're a good way to make a difference if you guys are looking for someplace. But we need to be looking for ways to make a difference for these families, because I imagine the death toll is going to be going up. It's raining there all day today, and it's going to get worse and worse. I'm going to finish on a happier note, which is that a group of teenagers were out on paddle boards looking for victims. Not a great idea in washes, by the way. And they thought they spotted a dog that was drowning. So they did this.
So much younger than today. I never needed anybody's help in any way. Now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find a gentle mind, I'll open up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down. And I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground.
LJ, can you pause for me? Thank you. All right, guys. We're going to move to story number 6, which is that last night President Trump addressed the nation. I was actually at the Capitol Hill while this address was going on. We were with members of the left and the right, their staffers. We were watching it. We were paying attention as he was pushing for support for the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act has been a flagship piece of legislation as a part of the Republican must-pass initiative. Nothing on affordability, but the SAVE Act. Now, I'm personally super opposed to elements of the SAVE Act. I grew up in Las Vegas where we had to show ID to vote for a long time. It changed recently, but we did have to do a signature match, which I think is actually almost more accurate than showing ID. So I used to have to show ID and I used to have to do a signature match. I have a very unique signature. I'm not necessarily opposed to every part of the SAVE Act. I do oppose me having to carry my marriage license with me to go vote because my name has changed, right? But I don't agree with a lot of what was said last night. President Trump said last night, he unveiled and stated that there had been rampant voter election interference throughout the last 12 to 16 years across every party and every platform. And I want to play video 6A because we've had lawsuits by every single losing presidential candidate since the Bush-Gore election of 2000, when it went all the way to the Supreme Court, right? That one almost made sense. It came down to like 300 votes in the nation, all across the nation, right? But every single losing candidate has sued and said election fraud since then, because saying it was stolen from you is much better than saying you lost. And we need to respect the electoral process. I really think that we need to understand Hillary Clinton sued in 2016, right? And then Trump said it was stolen in 2020. And this year, the Democrats said there was fraud and it came from overseas. And we're saying that again. I think the fraud in the last election was anointing a candidate at one of the parties because the other one didn't bow out in time. But can we roll Thomas Massey's video 6A, please?
I don't think the problem, is that our elections aren't secure because we control the House, we control the Senate, we control the White House, and in some degree we control the Supreme Court. So I asked my Republican colleagues, why are you complaining about election fraud? We won all the damn elections. The fraud that's going on is we're not holding ourselves to the promises that we made of fiscal responsibility, putting America first, making America healthy. The problem is we're wasting the opportunity that we were given in these elections, that we won, all of them.
All right, and then I want to pull up Marjorie Taylor Greene's response. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mario Nawfal shared that Marjorie Taylor Greene was asking important questions today. Did you get that photo from me, LJ?
Mm-hmm.
If the Russians rigged the 2016 election and China rigged the 2020 election, who rigged 2024? Why won't both parties, who both say voting machines can be hacked and votes flipped, get rid of voting machines? Why don't we just go to paper ballots? How absurd is it that all the people now leading the admin rolling out election fraud claims 6 years later are the same people that said election fraud wasn't real when they were being accused of Russia interfering in the last election? Has anyone been arrested besides Trump supporters? She says it's just a big shiny object to distract MAGA from the massive failure to deliver on their campaign promises. And I agree with her. The SAVE Act. Well, let's talk about what the SAVE Act actually did this week. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't pass the SAVE Act. I don't think any bill should ever be rolled into another bill that is a must pass. Ever. I don't agree with that. I favor single issue bills the American people get full transparency on. I don't like pork. I don't like lobbyist interjection. I don't like markups that are riddled with corruption, like we've seen this week at the Farm Bill in the Senate we've talked about. I don't like it. I want single issue bills. And if the SAVE Act is such a good piece of legislation and the Republicans control the House and the Senate, why can't they pass it? It's because a bunch of them don't agree with it. That's why. So what they did this week is they attached the SAVE Act to the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. That's how we fund the military each year. That's how we fund the military. They attached the SAVE Act to it, which is why Thomas Massey was the only Republican that voted no, along with 103 Democrats. But what else did they attach to the NDAA this week? They attached Section 219. 219 is the bill that integrates Israel and America's military apparatus. And they've attached two of these things now. to a must-pass bill that must be done. And we now have to do the work as the American people to leverage enough weight to try and strip them back out. But because the SAVE Act is in there and it's a flagship of this administration's campaign promises, even though it doesn't deliver on any affordability for the American people, it doesn't deliver on anything that will give relief to families, now we're supposed to look the other way as our military is integrated with another military, right? Is that what we're supposed to do? That's what's happened this week. I know we're coming to the end of our episode, friends. I want you guys to understand that you've been amazing for having me this week. I'm so glad to have been here. I want to recap some of your action items for the week. For anybody that's here that maybe wasn't here earlier in the week, we've talked about a lot of things that you can do to make a difference in this country. One, today at the top of the hour, contact your local, I'm talking like county council, county commission, local assembly, and you need to ask, what are we paying for fire department equipment, and why aren't you guys joining these lawsuits? These lawsuits to break up the monopolies that are now controlling firefighter equipment for everyone in America at record profits. These companies have tripled, quadrupled, even septupled the pricing on equipment that Americans have to protect American families. And there is now no competition. You cannot buy anything anywhere else. You simply cannot. Meanwhile, competitors overseas are paying a tenth of what we pay. A tenth of what we pay for essential equipment. And, you know, it seems to me that fighting fires is something that Trump could easily use the Defense Authorization Act to do. He wants to increase production. Why doesn't he do the Defense Production Act for firefighter equipment? Let's get those factories reopened. That's another thing he could do right now. You can do that right now, you know, because we do need to fight fires. And if we need to defend our nation, we're going to need firefighters to help us do that. Things can get blown up. Things can catch fire. We don't do those things. We don't prosecute monopolies. We don't break up corporations. We let them take everything from the American people, and they bleed us dry. And at this point, we're getting blood from stones. Earlier this week, we talked about the importance of taking action in the Senate Farm Bill. Right now, we have a Senate Farm Bill that's about to overrule the will of states to protect Americans from chemicals in our food supply, mRNA vaccines in our food supply, antibiotics and hormones in our food supply. Currently, there is an amendment to the Senate Farm Bill that is being pursued by Joni Ernst. She's retiring from Congress, and she desperately needs a job when she gets out. And her largest donors are JBS and Smithfield. They are international monopolies that wrote a bill called the Save Our Bacon Act that will overturn 1,000 state laws that protect Americans from forcing chemicals into our food supply. Our government has failed to do that work. The states have been doing that work, and it's keeping us healthier and safer. And right now, she's trying to force it through. Simultaneously, the Supreme Court, with a stacked deck, just gave Bayer Monsanto immunity at the state level. They did so by leaning on something called FIFRA, a very little known rule, a law that was passed that was written very badly by a lazy Congress. And Cory Booker is offering an amendment in that same farm bill that is a single sentence. It says FIFRA does not supersede states' rights. States' rights prevail. And if that amendment is approved, it undoes the immunity granted to Bayer Monsanto and allows farmers to sue when international monopolies kill the people that feed this nation. Right now, you guys can all be calling the members of the Senate Ag Committee and screaming. Don't scream at them. I just mean braille. We should never scream at staffers. They work really hard. You need to be letting them know how forcefully you want them to vote no on the Farm Bill unless we strip out SOBA and we codify states' rights with the Booker Amendment. States' rights are the only things keeping us safe. It's the only thing keeping us safe, okay? It's also preventing horrifying things like pumping our food full of chemicals. It's preventing horrifying things. Our states are the ones that are suing to stop monopolies right now, as the government has failed to do so. And lastly, yesterday we had James Lee on to talk about 219-224. We need to be calling the Senate and we need to be calling the House and saying absolutely no on the NDAA until 219 is stripped out. We do not agree with merging our military with the military of any other nation. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be Taiwan. It could be the UK. It could be Israel. We do not approve merging our military in an unbreakable way, because the way this is written, we can never undo it, and no future president can undo it. Permanently merging our military apparatus, our military knowledge sharing with an ally. So no on the NDAA. These are the things you can do this week to make a difference, not only in your community, but in your country. And it works. A lot of people think when I tell you guys to do these things, it doesn't work. We stopped pesticide immunity 3 times this year already by brute force and calling. This is a midterm election year. They do care when we're mad, especially because they're likely to lose the House. If you think the House does not care when we're mad, they care. The Senate, they're on a razor's edge of maintaining control. They care. And the Senate is more precarious. The House, they don't have the same purse strings attached to agriculture. The other side has purse strings attached to defense, right? We need to be very, very vocal. Right now in the Senate, the NDAA vote was stopped last week when it was filibustered by the Democrats over Section 219. We have the capacity to strip it out. We need to do it. We need to be loud. For all of you that joined today, I'm super grateful that you let me come in this week. I'm thankful for you guys rolling with my 1 p.m. start time because of my morning commitments. I'm so grateful you guys let me join, and I'll be back to visit Shannon all the time. I am Tiffany Cianci. You can follow me at The Vino Mom on X and on Instagram, and you can follow me on TikTok, YouTube, and everywhere else at Tiffany Cianci. I'm also at tiffanycianci.com. Thanks so much for having me, everyone. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Enjoy your family, enjoy your summer, and take care of one another and your community.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show.